The New York Yankees just got swept by the Atlanta Braves to put them at 60-61. It's the latest in a season they've been below 500 since 1995. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On MLB Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on in to Locked On MLB Prospects, your home for all things minor league baseball. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby, freelance baseball writer and podcaster. Thank you for making this your first listen. Every single day, we're proudly part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. And today's episode is made possible by our friends at Sleeper. Swing for the fences with Sleeper picks, and you could win up to 100 times your money. Download the Sleeper app, use promo code Locked On, you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Check out Sleeper today. Things are not going great for the New York Yankees. They have lost 10 of 15 games as of time of recording. They just got swept by the Atlanta Braves and honestly didn't even really look that competitive in the series. And so I mentioned this in the open, but this is the latest that the New York Yankees, latest in a season, the New York Yankees have been below 500 since 1995. Of the 26 players on the active roster, 9 of them were not yet born. And big question here is, what's going to happen now? And I don't think a postseason appearance is in the cards. Let's look at the prospects in the system. We just did our organizational rankings here at Locked On MLB Prospects. We just did our Yankees rankings. Let's look at the prospects and figure out what can be done. And I think one of the things you need is in the outfield, you need to get some help for Aaron Judge, right? Because it has been Aaron Judge. You have Harrison Bader, who may or may not be re-signed. We'll cover that in the third segment. And then after that, it's been a rotating cast of characters in left field. And one of the things that I noticed is the Yankees have had very few appearances at the plate from lefties. And 2 of the top outfield prospects we have at number 2 and number 3 in the system are either left-handers or switch hitters. Looking at Jasson Dominguez, 105 games in Double-A this year, 244, 361, 395, 14 home runs, 31 extra base hits, 75 walks to 125 strikeouts, and 36 of 43 on stolen bases. The real question about Jasson Dominguez is, what is Jasson Dominguez? What type of player is he going to be? Because when he signed, the comparisons were frankly ridiculous. They were people talking about Mickey Mantle comps, Mike Trout comps. That was a bit too much. And then he returned down to earth. And then now he is, in my mind, a solid prospect. There are things to like about Jasson Dominguez. There are flaws in his game that we have to acknowledge. And so what is Jasson Dominguez going to be for this New York Yankees team? And I think Jasson Dominguez is a guy that is going to be a center field / left fielder for the Yankees. He's not going to give you plus defense in center. I think we've seen by now that he's slowed down enough and the arm isn't quite enough where he's not going to be a plus defender in center field for you. Matter of fact, he has split time almost evenly in Double-A between center field and left field. 55 games in center, 43 games in left. And so he's going to give you above average defense, right? He does have good reads, good routes, reactions. He could cover center field for you in a pinch, but he's not necessarily going to be that standout, amazing defender in center field for you. But the big thing here is we're looking at the offense. And the slash line on the year for Jasson Dominguez, again, doesn't look great. 244, 361, 395. The observation that I've made on Jasson Dominguez is it feels like every time he goes to a new level, it maybe takes a little while to get going. His last 30 games in Double-A Somerset, 339, 403, 508. He leads the Eastern League in hits. He leads the Eastern League in stolen bases. And he's amongst the league leaders in a bunch of other stats. Total bases, RBIs, doubles. average, on base, OPS, extra base hits, like all of that stuff. And he's lowered his strikeout rate to 18.7%. He's raised his walk rate to 10%, has a 150 WRC plus. And when Jasson Dominguez gets settled and gets comfortable, he is able to be a middle of the lineup, a top to middle of the lineup bat for you that can play an above average left field. It makes sense he's the number 2 prospect in the system. Is Jasson Dominguez going to be one of the 5 best outfielders in baseball? I don't think he is. And a lot of people are going to say he's a bust because he didn't meet the comps and expectations that were put on him so early, but those were unrealistic. This, to me, an above average regular who can play left field like you would need a center fielder to play so that you can get good defense in Yankee Stadium. Jasson Dominguez will be a good major leaguer for the New York Yankees. He's not going to be one of the 5 best outfielders in baseball. And some people will think that's a failure. I think that's perfectly fine. I think Jasson Dominguez is set. The other outfielder who's going to give you a lefty presence in the lineup when he gets there, probably a year later, is Spencer Jones. 94 games this year in high A for Spencer Jones. 266, 335, 450. 12 home runs, 43 extra base hits in 94 games. 39 walks to 128 strikeouts in 94 games. And 32 of 40 on stolen bases. Spencer Jones is a massive human being, 6'6", 225. He is not Aaron Judge, and he should not be compared to Aaron Judge. Everybody compares him to Aaron Judge because they're both incredibly tall. But Aaron Judge does have great raw power, but he's not the same type of player that Aaron Judge is, okay? He's a plus runner. Arm strength is average or so. He's going to be, he can stick in center field, but he has more issues at the plate than Aaron Judge does. And Aaron Judge made a lot of improvement on fixing the offensive approach. But you can see from the slash line, Spencer Jones still has holes in his swing because he's so big. Literally, the strike zone is bigger for Spencer Jones. He still has holes. You can get him up and in. You can get him down and in. You can get him down and away, pitches that can just nick the corner of the zone, things like that. He is still projectable as far as the power potential, as far as the ability to increase his contact. And I do think that Spencer Jones, if there's anybody in this system that could be a top 15 prospect before they debut, it's Spencer Jones. The question for Spencer Jones is going to be, when does he put it all together? How long does it take for him to get all of this put together? I do think he's probably going to end up being the number 1 prospect in this system before he debuts. And Spencer Jones will give you not a backup plan, but will give you another option for either if you don't re-sign Harrison Bader and you eventually need a new center fielder, or if, as Aaron Judge gets into the back half of his career while he's on this long-term deal, if you want to start giving him less demanding assignments as far as not always having to play in the field, but letting him DH and things like that, you have options there, provided you figure out what to do with Giancarlo Stanton. So those two are your top 2 position player prospects. Now, behind Jasson Dominguez and Spencer Jones, I've got Everson Pereira at number 4, Austin Wells at number 5, either a catcher or a first baseman or both. We'll see. He still has more defensive work to do. And then number 6, Roderick Arias. And it's a shame that he got hurt and had that fantastic start of the year cut short by injury. In just a minute, let's talk about the pitchers, because this organization, maybe more so than a lot of others, does a really good job at taking projectable pitchers and making them better and getting them to the bigs. A lot of them have been relievers, but there's a lot of arm talent in this system, and we'll get to that next right here on Locked On MLB Prospects. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Sleeper. If you want the chance to win more money with less picks, head to Sleeper, the #1 sports app, when you can win up to 100% your money on just 2 or more fantasy baseball picks. Do you think Aaron Judge can hit a home run tonight? We obviously do. On Sleeper, you can swing for the fences with up to a 100 times payout. All you do is choose 2 or more players that you like and select more or less on their stat categories: home runs, strikeouts, hits, and more. If you get your picks right, you could win big. And dynamic payouts are live. Each player projection has a multiplier attached to it, as opposed to a preset multiplier based on the number of legs in a contest. So with dynamic payouts, you can get higher payouts than other apps with less picks. Use promo code LOCKEDON. You'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Now, terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. But Sleeper is currently operational in over 30 states, so check out Sleeper today. Okay, so looking at the pitchers in this New York Yankees system, there's a lot of arms in that middle group, right? You've got some guys that I love: Richard Fitz, Drew Thorpe. Get to them in a minute. You've got Randy Vasquez, Luis Gil, Kyle Carr, Clayton Beeter, a lot of guys in there. But the 2 that I want to talk about is the #7 prospect, who I have as right-hand pitcher Will Warren, and the #1 prospect, who I have as right-hand pitcher Chase Hampton. So Hampton, 2022 6th rounder out of Texas Tech. He's had 19 games between high A and double A. 4-3 record, 3.81 ERA in 101 2/3 innings for Chase Hampton. 139 strikeouts, so 12.3 per 9, to 36 walks, 3.2 per 9, and 13 home runs allowed. Now, this is a story of different performances at different levels. In high A, 9 starts for Chase Hampton, 2.68 ERA, 14.7 strikeouts per 9. He goes to double A Somerset, 2-2, 4.77 ERA over 10 starts with 10.2 strikeouts per 9. Facing a different level of competition, you do see a little bit of struggle from Chase Hampton that you had not necessarily seen up to this point. Now, that being said, he throws a lot of pitches, and they are good pitches. It is a power pitching profile. Fastball sits in the mid-90s. I've got it as a plus pitch. He's got a slider. He's got a curveball. I've got both of those as above average pitches. He has a cutter. He has a changeup. The velocity has gotten better. And because he has so many weapons, right? He's got the slider, the curveball, the changeup. Because he has so many weapons, he's able to deal with both lefties and righties. And so that gives you a pretty comfortable and safe floor for what Chase Hampton can be. 35% CSW in the minors, so call strikes plus whiffs, 16.7% swinging strike. So the stuff is good. He's able to locate it well. A lot of this is as the hitters are better as you move up in the minors and they're not as willing to chase, you have to work on your sequencing, you have to work on your location. And I think with Chase Hampton, it's just a matter of time before you start to see the amazing results that you're expecting in Double A. So that's why I have him as the #1 pitching prospect in this system. I still don't necessarily think he's anything more than maybe a #3, probably like a future 5, a 55 future value. But I do Chase Hampton a lot. I do think because he throws so many pitches, he's comfortable with all of them. It helps you in a platoon situation. And it shows that this organization can develop pitchers, can make them better. Again, he added some velocity, he fixed the mechanics, and got better. Continue doing that, and you're going to have a guy who can be in your rotation. I would think probably, given how much work he still needs to do, probably 2025. But if some of this takes off, it could be late in the second half of the year next year where you see Chase Hampton at the major league level. The other guy I have in the top 10 is right-hand pitcher Will Warren, 2021 8th rounder out of southeastern Louisiana. I think they used to go by SELA, and now they go by like southeastern Louisiana or something like that. They've shortened it and been a little specific as to what they want to be called, but not important. 20 games for Will Warren between Double-A and Triple-A this year. 7-4, 4.23 ERA, and 89 in the third innings. 104 strikeouts, so 10.5 per nine, to 45 walks, 4.5 per nine, and 12 home runs allowed. Now, like Chase Hampton, it's been a picture of extremes from the two levels. When he was in Double-A, 6 starts, 3-0, 2.45 ERA, with 12 strikeouts per 9 innings. When he got to Triple-A, 14 starts in Triple-A, 4-4, 5.10 ERA, with 9.8 strikeouts per 9. So the strikeouts came down. The walks did tick up a little bit. Chase Hampton's walk numbers are like virtually the same. Will Warren's walk numbers did tick up a little bit, but part of the reason for this is there is a little bit more of a ceiling on Will Warren than on Chase Hampton, and it's because of what he does. He started off, he was a 4-seam fastball and curveball guy. Vertical breaking curveball, 4-seam fastball that sat low to mid-90s, 93, 94. The Yankees did a lot of work on him, and they did him first, and then they did Chase Hampton next, and that's the pattern in the profile. But they gave him a 2-seamer, they gave him a slider, and what they did, and then he added a cutter. And what they did was they took him from being a fastball up in the zone, curveball down in the zone guy, to being able to attack more laterally, right? You have a slider that obviously, because it's a Yankee slider, it is a sweeper. So you have the sweeper, you have the cutter, which kind of gives you the same direction, but not nearly as extreme movement. You've got the changeup running the other direction. You've got the 2-seamer that runs the same direction as the changeup, but usually faster. And so he's got multiple velocity bands in there. The sweeper's in the low 80s. It's 83 or so. The cutter and the changeup are around 87 or 88. So even if you guess the right direction, you figure, okay, he's going to attack me away. He can vary the speed by about 5 miles an hour on you and really get you to induce a ground ball. That's the big thing for Will Warren, is inducing those ground balls. Now, the place where he struggles is the stuff itself outside of, I would say probably outside of the outside of maybe the sweeper and the sinker. The stuff isn't necessarily phenomenal. CSW rates come in below average on most everything else. And as a whole, CSW's at 27.5%. We're looking for 28 to 30, so slightly below average there. Swinging strike rate of only 13%. Now, the sweeper does really well. 35% CSW, 22% swinging strike. A lot of that's fueled by the chase. He does have 5 home runs off of it for when he leaves it in the wrong place. And that's another issue you have, is the location for Will Warren. When you work laterally as compared to working vertically, it is more likely that your misses will cost you. Because if you're trying to throw a curveball and catch the bottom of the zone, the most likely place you're going to miss with that curveball is low. You're going to spike it, right? If you're trying to elevate a fastball, what's most likely is you're going to over-elevate the fastball, and the catcher has to pop up to get it. If you're trying to locate a sweeper and you over-sweep it, it's a wild pitch, or it's going to hit the batter. It's running away. And so if you're trying to keep it looking like a strike for longer before you let it go outside the zone and have them chase it, because you're trying to get them to chase, if you keep it in the zone for longer, you're more likely to miss in the zone, if that makes sense. If you are, like the goal on the sweeper, right, is it needs to look like a strike for as long as possible before it darts out of the zone at the last second. When you miss on those, inherently you miss in the zone, because the goal is to let the pitch stay in the zone for as long as possible. That's one of the issues that Will Warren has, is the location and where he misses. And then some of that also comes back to control and command, and that is the effort in his delivery. Little concerned about what's going to happen there, about what the overall ceiling is for Will Warren. Is he going to be able to make it as a starter, or will he be limited to a fastball, slider, sinker reliever kind of guy? we'll see what happens. Two other guys that I wanted to mention them. Number 9 pitcher Richard Fitts, number 10 pitcher Drew Thorpe. Both of them have looked very good this year. Richard Fitts' last 2 starts in Double-A. 2-0, 13 innings, 5 hits, no runs, 12 strikeouts to 4 walks. You got a deal on him in the draft because he was injured his final year of college, and he's finally showing you that, no, he is the guy you thought he was. Drew Thorpe, number 10 prospect in the system. I think he's going to rise pretty quickly. He just got to Double-A. First Double-A start, I think he won that start. But his 18 starts in High A, 10-2, 2.81 ERA, 138 strikeouts, and 109 innings pitched. So, lots of really projectable arms here. Question is, what are the ceilings on these guys, and how long until you can get them to the bigs? We'll look at that and the future construction of this roster next on Locked On MLB Prospects. Welcome back into Locked On MLB Prospects, your home for all things minor league baseball. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby, going through the New York Yankees system. If you want access to these rankings and all the rest of our team rankings, we've already done shows for the Mets, the White Sox, the Reds. Now this, we're going to be doing some more next week. The way to get access to those is through our subtext. Links in the episode description, links in our show notes. The subtexters also get first priority in the mailbag. And like you saw last week, sometimes all we have room for in the mailbag is stuff from the subtexters. Again, links in the episode description for that. Looking at this farm system, the timelines, when all of these guys are going to get to the bigs. First, the actual ranking of the farm system, I have this as a top half farm system. Probably somewhere around 12, 13 or so. And the reason it's not higher is I like a lot of the talent at the top. But none of these guys, as of now, look like they're going to be superstars. You don't have that projectable, this guy may be a top 5 guy at his position in the future. Whereas a lot of farm systems, there is somebody that you can look at. A lot of the top farm systems, the top 10 farm systems, there's somebody you can look at and say, this guy could potentially be a top 5 first baseman in all of baseball, a top 5 shortstop in all of baseball. You can see those kind of projectable guys. You don't necessarily have that star projection on anybody in this system. I do like the pitching depth a lot. The complex level team is very impressive. And I've been on the record before as saying that I have a blind spot when it comes to Dominican, Summer League, and complex level because the team for Locked On MLB Prospects is small. It is me. I am the team. I am the writer. I am the producer, the director, the sound engineer. I am the research assistant. I am everything. And it is sometimes tough for us to cover not only 120 full season affiliates, but then also complex level and rookie ball. And that's why we do things like bring in Chris Clegg from Dynasty Dugout to talk about complex and rookie and Dominican hitters you should know. But when you look at this future roster, the infield, you're going to be getting rid of some big contracts soon. Josh Donaldson should be done and gone soon. Anthony Rizzo doesn't have incredibly much longer left on his contract. You've promoted some of the youngsters already. Obviously, Anthony Volpe has been the starter all year. You have Oswald Peraza. Oswaldo Cabrera can play anywhere on the field. And so what you need is you need to see, can you upgrade any of these positions in the infield? And what do we do in the outfield? I think re-signing Harrison Bader is probably something the Yankees want to look at doing. He has had some injury concerns, but when he's been healthy, he's been a really good defensive center fielder who has been able to hit enough. And I think if you re-sign Harrison Bader, now you have options as far as Jasson Dominguez would be the next outfielder up. If you want one of your top prospects, there's obviously guys like Estevan Florial, who is one of the reasons why I think you should re-sign Harrison Bader, because Florial is a very good defender, but he just has way too much swing and miss for him to project out as being a useful major leaguer. And even when you saw the injury concerns this year, The only playtime Florial got at the major league level was he got to pinch run one time. And so he's been in the minor leagues for a long time, but he hasn't got a ton of run in, he hasn't got a ton of playtime in the majors. And I don't know at this point if all they used him for literally was one pinch running appearance with all of the injuries the Yankees have had and all of the questions they've had in left field. It almost feels like they're not going to use Estevan Florial, which means you need to re-sign Harrison Bader, and then you're not worried about filling as many spots with guys like a Jasson Dominguez, eventually then a Spencer Jones, and then again, you have other outfield options, Everson Pereira, you do have Florial. Brando Maia is significantly away, so no worries there. And then looking at the infield, like we said, you have multiple options as far as Peraza, as far as Volpe. You do have guys who are still going to be hanging around you have contractual control of. Gleyber Torres has a couple more years, I believe, on his deal. And for the most part, you're okay unless you can do some sort of impact addition. The only real place is first base and catcher are the two where you have to do some work. Austin Wells can fill one of those two. The question is, can he catch well enough to stick at stick at catcher, or does he have to move to first base? Not 100% sure what's going to happen. We also don't know what's going to happen with Anthony Rizzo. He's been out for with that post-concussion syndrome symptoms for a while. We'll see what happens. And so this farm system is set up well to reinforce the major league team so that in 24 or 25, probably 25, you've been able to bring up some of these pitchers because, my goodness, the pitching injuries have just devastated this team. And that's been the real big problem. The offense hasn't done a lot, but the pitching has been so banged up and injured outside of Garrett Cole and Clark Schmidt. Randy Vasquez has looked pretty decent in his small samples, but they've been small samples. And so you take a Cole, Schmidt, maybe a Vasquez, you add a guy like a Hampton, you add a guy like a Warren or a Fitz or a Thorpe, you get a Carlos Rodon back, you get a Nestor Cortez back, and you've got Frankie Montes maybe. You've got plenty of options for this rotation to get you back into contention. It's a fun week this week. Next week, we're doing more farm system rankings. We're also talking about ESPN's top 100. They had one of their top 2 prospects in all of baseball not be a Jackson. We'll talk about that next week. In the meantime, if you have questions for the mailbag, tons of ways to get them to us. Again, subtext, probably the best one. Links in the episode description, links in the show notes. Until Monday's show, enjoy the games this weekend, and remember, it's always a great time to pay a minor leaguer.